Good morning and welcome back to another look at the Wave 1 Custom Set Showcase figures. And today, as promised, it is the 14th of February. So, being so close to Valentine's Day, what better time than to rank all of my children? Yes, so today we're going to be going from bottom to top on all of the Wave 1 figures that I've drawn, and if any of these interest you and you want to check out the full showcase relating to them or the set that I put them in, then the playlist will be linked at the top and you can find it easily on the channel. But let's get into this with the worst of every figure that I've drawn. And that would happen to be the Fairy Queen from Wind Waker. And this is more of a technical flaw that I have with this character. There is no really easy way to transform it, and I don't believe that the Ghost Spectral piece is really the best option. I would never see them making a new mold for that body, considering that the kind of balance issues that would be had. I really do like the use of the Rio Duran arms, and as with every figure, I am proud of them. This is one of the earlier ones that I did, so that explains a lot of the troubling facial features and other things, but overall I think it's just the worst one that I've produced throughout my time. But moving on up, we have the Santa Guardian, and I'm sure some of you would be surprised to see this so low down the list, but really it's that Santa hat. It's such a strange variant that I just kind of shoved into the advent calendar, and I don't really like it, but it just kind of had to be there for the sake of it. I much prefer the original Guardian. Also not really sure how the Santa hat would attach, so it's low down on the list. Next up is the Mad Scrub, mostly for size and just impossibility to translate. I couldn't get the kind of scrubby nature around the hat without a custom mold. He clearly isn't shaped in the right way using that giant cone piece, but I do like the use of the splat pieces once again, and I'm semi-proud of this purist design. Next up is the Gomeling, and this one just really suffers because of how small it is and how undetailed it is compared to some of the other builds. As you can see, it also just doesn't have the main legs, and some of the colour schemes do differ, although I did try to focus on the inside of the eye, which is why that is not teal in colour. Next up is the Helmasaur from the cancelled Z0002, the Water Temple, and you can see here this was a very difficult one to translate into brick built form. I had no bold budget to give him a nice exclusive piece, so we made do with a Star Wars engineer on the Death Star helmet and some weird Technic pin legs. Basically, it's a monstrosity, but I'm still proud of how clever it was to get this design working. Next up we have Tingle, whose face expression just really lets him down. Also, for some reason the map isn't high definition, otherwise this figure's great. I just don't like him as a character, so he's here. Next up is Fi, and she again suffers on a technical standpoint. While the design technically is accurate and fits, I've just noticed that not only are the arms in reverse, but the chicken wings aren't exactly perfect. There's no metallic shine like I think they probably would make, and while the headpiece that I designed for this custom wave does fit very well for her, her facial expression is lacking some emotion or accuracy to the actual figure. Next up, we have Young Pure from Age of Calamity, and this one just suffers because at the time of making her, we had no real proper images of how she was going to look in the game, just that one from the initial trailer, stories from 100 years ago kind of thing there. So I was basing it off a very small image, and that was fairly hard to do. I'm particularly pleased with the hairpiece uses that I chose, although, like with the Robbie from Age of Calamity, which you'll see later, I wish I had done a custom mold for this. There's also possibly slightly something wrong with the face, but I am pretty pleased with the figure, so it didn't end up quite at the bottom. Going on up, she just has a scary face and her detail is off. I'm not going to say any more here. There's just some things that I'd do differently if I redid this figure. Next up, we have Tetra, and I absolutely love the accessory and the posing and the simplistic way of the printing, but that hairpiece is physically impossible. They would never be able to make it like that, and that facial expression is scary. Next up we have Scrapper, who just suffers from, once again, that brick built character look. He's instantly recognisable, yes, but does he actually look like Scrapper from the game? No, not really. And then we have the initial Guardian Egg, which is actually pretty good looking in comparison to the source material. The only problem is at the time I thought he had 4 eggs, because again I was working off concept art, but no, he has 3 legs, so that's kind of awkward. So he's not at the top accuracy-wise. He's not my favourite character ever, but I think he looks good and fits the custom set showcase. Next up, we have Midna, and not being the hugest fan of Twilight Princess really doesn't help this character in the whole. I believe the hairpiece is alright, although missing definitely some of the details. The printing is simplistic but accurate. The real problem for me is the accessory. I can't believe that when I drew this, I actually thought the Mirror of Twilight looked like that. That is really just a shame to myself and the whole community. Next up is Zant, who I don't think what you would have done would have looked slightly weird, but I am particularly proud of how he came out. Again, not a huge fan of the character, but I'm still really pleased with the design considering I did him from this blurry image here. In hindsight, maybe the helmet could be a bit better, but I actually, on second thoughts, it looks pretty good. Next up, we have the random generic Castletown citizen, and this tells you something about my personality when you see these higher up than some of the major characters like Zant, Midna, and Noboru. But I just really like the concept of taking these random background citizens that I found on Google Images and turning them into minifigures to fill out the Castletown People Pack. And this is my least favourite of the two, but I still think it came out particularly well. However, this one I like more because he has a funny cat, and that's just really cool. They work really well as citizens, and I'm glad I got to include just some random people from the universe that aren't necessarily named into my showcase. Next up, just above that, we have Mallow with that weird new bow piece, as well as some interesting mid-leg printing. He's just scary like Tingle, so he can't be liked anymore, but I do kind of like what was going on here a bit more than that, so it's a bit higher up the list. Next up with mid-legs, and the first link in the series is the child link from Ocarina of Time, and I had to reuse the Skyward Sword hairpiece to keep down the mold budget, and that didn't particularly work well. I also don't love the facial expression, it looks a bit squashed. I'm particularly pleased with the mid-leg and torso printing, and the slingshot is the perfect recolor. Next up we have young Impa, who the more I look at, the more I think looks slightly similar to her on-screen appearance, but not as close as some of the other characters I have drawn. The torso is a bit squiff and simplistic, but I do like the legs and the detail of the face print, and that new hairpiece is really nice as well. We're starting to get into the middle of the list here, and a lot of these ones are ones that I actually am really proud of and do like. Higher up we have Man Ho-Ho, which is just another one of those weird characters. The reason he's not higher is because I didn't get to draw the most interesting thing about him, which was his eye, and that's mainly because the Lego telescope piece is so big. But the character quality isn't particularly high here, and neither is the detail, so we can't really go any higher, but I was still pleased to get to draw such a random inclusion. Next up we have the first of the Koroks, and I think these are just so iconic and well built for their scale, size, and ability to transfer to Lego that I was really proud. This one's my least favourite of the three because I think the legs are just a bit stubby, but it works for what I was going for. I do particularly like the recolour of the green heart piece with printing to represent that winky face. I definitely think that's the most iconic of the Korok faces from Breath of the Wild. Next up we have this Korok, which is taking inspiration from the picture you see on the screen. However, I had to change up the face leaf shape to fit a more nice piece that doesn't currently exist in that colour, but I think looks really nice. I think I just like the colour scheme of this guy more, but again, it's just a small Korok build, not really as good as some of my other figures. And the final Korok of the one was the one from the Advent Calendar, and I do really like this one, mainly because he is holding that little propeller that's letting him fly. I think the shield piece is one of the better pieces suited for the Korok leaves, and the legs definitely fit a bit more further in due to the extra brick down below. So really pleased with this one, just wish that was a bit more high definition, but we've always got time to improve. Next up is Agatha, who is here for all of her accessories and prints. I really do like the printed butterfly wings on the back with that sparkly texture, as well as the torso print in that light aqua colour on the legs. The golden ponytails are simple but work, and the face print kind of gets across what I was going for, although I wish I'd included eyebrows. The basket and the umbrella are nice touches, and overall she's a pretty heavily accessorized figure. Slightly more important than that is one of the custom molds of the series, and that is the custom mold Mogma head for Led the Mogma from the Fire Sanctuary. In hindsight, his hand should be black and he should probably have a bit more printing, but this was one of the first ones I drew, and considering it has a custom mold that actually accepts the fez piece, as well as actually able to fit that bushy tail on the back, is pretty cool, and I'm really proud of this design. I think it kind of bridges that Lego and Zelda aesthetic in the same place, but definitely one of the earlier figures, so technically wise you can see a lot of problems with this one. Next up we have Ultira, who definitely does look like her counterpart. Again, I wish I'd included a skirt piece for her, but the inclusion of the Sheikah Slate was nice. What makes this character just a bit more for me is the fact that she was drawn and then immediately usurped by her younger counterpart when the Age of Calamity trailers dropped, literally just a week later. It's a shame I could not give her a specialised headpiece, but this was the best existing one for her. Overall, not my favourite, but not my favourite character anyway. Moving on up, we have Sheik from her iconic perspective, and I also am a fan of what I managed to do with the torso and legs. I really like the use of the ninja wrap and then the bandage piece. At some point, I'd like to go back and give the bandage headpiece an actual custom mold for the hair to be attached, but I was pretty pleased with this one, and having the harp as an accessory was also a nice touch. Next up, we have the first of the Resistance member with Russell. The thing that saves this guy for me is the printing detail on his torso and legs, which I am really proud of actually, and the reuse of the Monkey Kid headband, which was just such a perfect piece for this figure. The face absolutely kills this guy for me though, and definitely nowhere near my favourite. Next up, we have Ashay, who again just about cuts it because of the printing. I particularly like the face, but the hairpiece gets lost in the black. I've now fixed that error, but definitely not my favourite. Next up, we have Aru, who is here not so because he looks accurate, but because he looks cute. As a future update to him, I would have liked to have given him the Kevin hair sort of minion hairpiece, which I think would have worked really well for that little tuft on his head in dark bluish grey. But his eyes are slightly too big, but once again, I do like the printing. But the best Resistance member that I drew by far was Shad, with those amazing dual molded legs and great stocking printing. The nice cover on Book of the Sky, which I actually do really like. The nice simple torso printing and the glasses print with the Superman hair on his head. I really do like this figure that I drew here. Definitely one of the better members of the Resistance that I was able to construct. And I'm actually really pleased to see him here so high up the list compared to some of the other figures I've drawn. Next up, we have Old Robbie, whose face expression just really sells it. I also do really love that accessory of the ancient core. The mid-legs are cool, Sheikah Slate is also cool, and the backpack works. Torso's alright. Overall, a really well-rounded figure. A shame again about moulded headpieces, but there's nothing I can really do. I also like that for him, I chose to give him the ancient goggles print over his face. It was a nice different touch. Definitely a figure that I really do like. Moving on up, we have Bruce's Loftwing. Yeah, I'm including all of the buildable characters in here, and the Bruce's Loftwing is lower than Link's Loftwing because the colours aren't just as accurate, just missing a couple of things like the necklace, the horn on his head, and maybe a bit of sand blue in there as well. But overall, still a really nice build just looking at it without the colours, so I'm really pleased with how the Loftwings turned out. Next up is the Black Bokoblin, my least favourite of the Bokoblin variants, because I could not add all the white printing because it was too difficult to do. That's about as simple as it goes. I love the head mould and I like the printing, it's just a shame about the markings. Next up is Old Impa, who scares me to death. Her triangle build at the bottom, I really do love. Now, next up is Skyward Sword Link, who probably doesn't deserve to be this far, but the nostalgia for me of having this being one of the first ones that I ever drew, and across so many of the sets with that amazing hairpiece that I am still really proud of, I do really like this guy here. The really only thing I don't like would be the lack of detail on the shield and the face print, but those will all be fixed in Wave 2. But it doesn't stop me being proud of this figure. Next up, we have Charlo, who is just funny to me, and a dress piece is always going to win. I really like the gradient on the dress piece, as well as the little begging cup. Shame about specialised mould, which is why he could not get any higher. Next is the Goblin Archer, who did get a specialised mould, who, looking back on, probably shouldn't have. Reusing the ninja wrap, this weird deformed headpiece that would fit into it. I think this character is really good, and I do like the printing. The torso is a bit plain, though, so that kind of lets this one down, and I'm not sure about the light grey bow recolor when I think about it. Probably should have had a quiver as well. So a couple of things wrong with this figure, but still a well-rounded one. Next up we have Wolflink, who I think I did a pretty good job on from my knowledge at the time. One of the earlier figures I completed yet again, and I think this is a really good inclusion for the custom set showcase. So he's here more out of iconicness rather than anything, but I am still really pleased with how he came out given everything that I've done for the showcase. Next up we have Instructor Olan, one of the more high definition figures on the list, reusing Galadriel hairpiece in white with medium tan ears. I really like the facial expression. I think the torso needs a bit of work, but I do love the dress piece and I think that detail came out very well. Next up is Beedle, and he really steals the show for me for his expressions and being the only character with a nose, because he wouldn't be Beedle without it. But those accessories is really brilliant, and I do like the leg printing as well. In fact, looking back on him, this figure is really well rounded. I think I was a bit dismissive of him when I did the CMF showcase. The hair maybe needs a bit of work, but apart from that, I actually do really like this figure. Next up is one of my absolute favourites, is the Choo Choo build that I came up with based off the Wind Waker Choo Choo. This one fits so well, and I'm so pleased with how this turned out. I love the use of the splat piece to represent that gooey stuff around the bottom, and the face expression just looks so crazed. It's brilliant. No, I'm not my favourite of the colours which I've done, which is why we haven't seen the others yet. I absolutely adore this build, and it's one of my favourite things to come out of the showcase. And we have the Blue Koblin with the slightly better colour scheme, as I explained before. I like this one just a bit more, but you can clearly tell which one's my favourite. Next up, though, we have the Warship, which is another build which translated really well, and I love the play features that I was able to incorporate as well. Maybe there's a couple of things missing from the in-game design that I could have been transferred across here, which is why it's not any higher, but I do love what I was able to create, especially with all those functions in the middle that would have made it a bit more blocky. And then we have Cyclos. Yes, Cyclos, not Zephos, which is basically half of a minifigure shoved into a purple cloud. And I was really glad that I included this guy, and again, I'm really pleased with the exclusive head mold I was able to give him. Maybe there's a couple of things missing here again, maybe a bit more high definition, some arm printing or something, but I am really pleased with how he turned out, so I'll give him a pass. Then we have Toon Link, which, unlike Zelda, I do not mind the expression on his face. In fact, I think it works really well. The simplistic torso, while technically frustrating, is a nice inclusion, and the dual molded mid legs also work very well. The little sword is good too. I probably should have included the hero shield from the beginning of that game, but oh well, there's always the next showcase. Next up, we have the Sheikah Warrior, again one of the more detailed figures that I really do like, with all that different printing on it and the recolor of the Misako hairpiece, which is a perfect part usage. The idea behind this figure was that you could either have a generic Sheikah Warrior army, or you could change the face out to be Link's to create the Sheikah stealth armor from Breath of the Wild, and I think that was a really nice concept, and I was really glad to see this figure in a sort of army building form, at least somewhere in the showcase. Next up, we have Skyward Sword Impa, another one of the high definition figures, with a bit of a weird accessory that I am very partial to, with that miniature Gate of Time. The arm printing is nice, and I think it was clever to not have to make a rubberized hairpiece by printing it down the side of her face, although one day I would like to do the rubber hairpiece. I really like the face print as well. These figures are getting more high quality as we go up the ranking here, and I really do like this one. Next up is Girahim Phase 2 from the Fire Sanctuary, and I love how I was able to reuse that one-sided long hair from the cabbage piece from the Chinese New Year set and City before that. The face print really does look menacing, and I just think this is one of the more iconic characters that I was able to translate in a way that is still recognizable. I think this one's one of the best transformations that I've done in the showcase, and I'm really pleased with him. We have the Magmarmane, ever slow inching him out just for how many iterations I went through to kind of get that hand kind of look. Then the play feature also excels in this guy, with the top exploding like you have defeated him. I really do like this build, and the fact that it can interact with figures and was part of the initial set is probably why it's so high up on the list. Although now looking back, I would probably rank Girahim ever so slightly higher. Then we have Phantom Ganondorf with that amazing headpiece, being the only Ganondorf of the wave, and with that amazing staff build, I could not put him down low. I really do like the printing, which is obviously from the Phantom Ganon boss fight in Ocarina of Time, and I think the head mold came out well, even though it is specialized. Above that, we have Magic Armor Link, which is the improved variant of the Skyward Sword Link, with that much better face print and addition of the crest to the red version of his hat piece. The shield got an update too, and the printing for the magic armor is very nice despite that. So overall, this figure pretty much fixed everything I wanted to fix in the Skyward Sword variant, and I was really glad that I got another chance at this figure. It also just is a nice color scheme. We have Macau, representative of the Zora, which is another really nice figure. I'm particularly fond of the guitar and the colour scheme for this guy. Maybe in hindsight I would have put a bit more printing on the legs and the right or left arm from our perspective. And then I think the headpiece needs just a tad bit of work, but overall a really good figure in a high definition format. Next up, Demise, and he's here purely for his detail. This one took absolutely forever, but in hindsight I wish I'd added a cloth piece. That doesn't stop me absolutely loving how this guy turned out. Probably redo the sword as well, but he looks so evil in this shot, and I'm really pleased with the use of the Hades piece. Definitely one of the top figures for me. We have Darunia, who has the honor of saying he has the best custom head mold, with that face that just looks so much like him, even though it's not quite accurate. I really like the pose and the simplistic printing here, because Gorons don't have too much detail. The Fire Medallion probably needs a rework, but apart from that, this guy came out really well, and I'm really pleased with him. Moving into some of the more jokey figures, we have Santa Ganondorf from Wave 2 here, and I love all of the accessories of the Christmas figures, and you're going to see them all here in quick succession. The reuse of the grip hook piece is another great part usage in my eyes, and I love how I was able to change the torso so that every element was representing something Christmassy instead. He also just looks so peeved off with the situation. It's really a great figure that was so fun to draw for Christmas. Then we have Gingerbread Link up next, and he is here because of how much, well, just how funny he looks, really. I really love how this guy turned out. It's such a joke figure, but the icing prints work really well. The present, once again, is nice, and the blue gingerbread eyes work brilliantly. I absolutely love that I was able to draw a figure like this. This is so crazy, but moving on up, we have the Christmas Zelda as well, with all those Breath of the Wild references on the Christmas jumper, and they look amazing to me. I love how the woolen jumper turned out, and that new face print for her, not to mention the hairpiece in yellow, and of course the print down below. I really do like this figure. It just screams winter rather than Christmas, and it was a nice contrast with the other two. I had to have all three owners of the Triforce, and this one was definitely my favourite of those three for the Christmas set. We have the Zora Lama Link from the cancelled Z002, the Water Temple, with the updated shield and sword from the Hero Link, as well as the face print. The only thing that really changed on this guy was the leg and torso printing, which I also really like. But what steals the show for me is the custom molded helmet for that Twilight Princess Zora. Considering this is the only time I get to draw the Twilight Princess Zora suit, it's a shame that the set won't be there, because I really do like how this figure turned out. But yeah, maybe I should have given him flippers or something. Next up is the blue Choo Choo, and the colour scheme really just elevates this guy for me. This is definitely the rarer Choo Choo variant, and I absolutely love how this guy turned out. Same face print, same pieces, just a different colour that looks much better in my opinion. Also for the Water Temple. Then we have the Dark Lizalfos, the Lizalfos of Wave 1, in that really cool style Skyward Sword variant. And the reason this guy is so high up is because how I took the Breath of the Wild molds, which I want to use again later, and transformed them into an actual Skyward Sword character variant that doesn't actually appear elsewhere in the game, which I think was something very clever and unique to do so early on in the showcase. The only thing I really should have done was given his other arm in Gunmetal Grey, but looking back, obviously there's always going to be something I should have done. Then after that we have Charlo, probably one of the more simple figures, but one that I actually love how it turned out. Reusing the peasant hood in a dark green, and some amazing arm and leg printing. I think this guy really looks like his counterpart in a Lego style, and I really do like how this guy turned out, actually. Moving on up, we get to Tracy from Breath of the Wild, and her 2x2 print of the Molduga is one of my favourites, not to mention her character in Breath of the Wild being so small yet so funny. With the backpack, she can be found in Gerudo studying Nirvana Boris, and then the Moldugas in the DLC. Love the dual molded legs, and I was glad that I was able to include her as a named character in one of the sets. We have another build, which would be Goma, which, surprisingly how inaccurate she actually looks really accurate. I really love how this turned out in the Lego style, and I think it fits perfectly what Lego would kind of do, where they take a take on some of the bigger bosses, and they'd look somewhat like the bosses, they look recognizable, but they'd also have this real charm about them, and that's what I'm really pleased that I was able to get across with Goma here. Next up is Link's Loftwing, completely iconic and basically perfect as far as builds go. I really love that I was able to do this one so accurately, and I'm really pleased that it turned out as accurate as it did. Maybe some eye printing would be in store, but I'm really pleased with the Loftwing design overall, and the colour schemes for Links really do make this one pop more than Cruises. We have the Guardian, which another one is a build that I'm very proud of. The fact that I was able to get the shaping exactly how I wanted first try was so pleasing to me, and the fact that the legs will actually support it is another great inclusion. This is one that I definitely want to build in real life in the future. I just don't have the pieces, obviously, to do so right now, but this is such a great build that I was really pleased with. I was so nervous going into doing the Guardian with so many amazing mocks out there, but in the end I am very happy with what I was able to create. We have young Robbie, the last of the Aged Calamity young figures, and I think he came out the best because I gave him a custom mold. The torso and leg printing is fairly simple, but he's got his blue gloves on and a hairpiece that sits over the top. He does really look like his counterpart from the game, which is why he's so high up the list. Then we have the King of Red Lions, my absolute favourite of the brick built characters, because it is actually buildable in real life and it looks amazing. This guy just came out so well. I genuinely cannot believe that he looks as good as he does, considering how small and minifigure scale he is, and I'm really pleased with how he turned out. You can just see it here. For a Lego scale, this is really similar to the actual model, and I'm really, really pleased with him. Next up is the Red Bokoblin, here because of his iconicness and his head mold. He's my favourite of the three because he's in the traditional colour scheme, but apart from that, there's nothing really holding him apart. He's just here because he is here. We have the Christmas Choo Choo, my absolute favourite of the Choo Choo variant, just because it's so funny. It's also in dark green, so another common Choo Choo colour, but with all those Christmas-like prints that he's tangled up in. He still has that deranged facial expression. It looks so funny wrapped up in lights. I love this Christmas figure, and I'm really pleased that he made it into the showcase. Such a crazy idea that I absolutely love, even now. And then getting closer and closer to the top, we have Big Octo up next, who is just an incredible work of engineering. I'm not going to dwell too long on him. You've already seen the showcase Z004, but with all of those functions and abilities, I'm really astounded by how well this turned out. I loved the Octo fights from the Wind Waker, so it was an absolute joy to get to try and translate those into a Lego playset. And having this giant character that actually looks as much like the Octo as it does as the end result, I was so happy with. Next up is the Hyrulean Soldier, who came out brilliantly. I really plan on reusing him again because, you know, it's possible. Again, you could change him out to be the Link from Age of Calamity, but you can see all the soldier printing on his arms, really detailed there, legs and torso with that sash down the middle, reusing the Rohirrim helmet or possibly a new mold, and then a spear in his hand. He looks great. Further up still, we have Groose, another of the high-definition yet simple figures. I think the face works really well here with the new moulded head he has on the top. We have some dual-moulded legs down below and some dual-moulded arms on the side, which look also really great with those little bits of shoulder printing. I really like how this figure turned out, even if it is a bit simplistic. But, you know, I think it's good. Next up, we have Breath of the Wild Zelda in her praying dress, which is just another really high quality print on the torso. Being exclusive to the GWP, she has an exclusive dress piece, torso, and face print, but the hair is the same from the CMF variant. In the end, I think this just comes down to the print looking really high quality, and it's just a nice figure. And we have the joke all time, the Digilink figure, what I hope we don't make, but to be honest, it's one of the favourite figures I've ever drawn. He came out looking so much like he'd fit next to Mario. I absolutely love this guy. I kind of wish they'd make him now, and I'm definitely going to do a custom set based off this concept in the future. But he just looks great, and I'm really glad that, of all things, I chose to draw him. Next up, we have Skull Kid from the CMF, who just looks absolutely perfect, really reusing that witch piece with some printing. The Snitch from Harry Potter, as well as some printed mid-legs in some olive green and reddish brown, and the Majora's Mask piece, which is detachable, which I think is a great touch. I'm really, really liking this figure, and I'm really pleased that this is the one again that I got to draw in this first wave, as I do really like the way he looks. And getting very, 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 very close to the top, we have the Breath of the Wild Champion Tunic Link, which I think pairs perfectly with the Breath of the Wild research outfit Zelda. And I really love the custom molded hair that I was able to give him here, as well as the beautiful torso and leg printing in that amazing medium blue, with the sword piece as well. This guy just looks so great. I'm so happy with this figure turned out. I went through 3 iterations just to get him to fit the Zelda from Breath of the Wild as well. And I'm so glad that I put the effort in. He looks brilliant, and I'm really pleased with him. Almost at the top now, we have the Phantom Armor with a 2x3 shield print, as well as some amazing detail on there, as well as an arm piece with a custom molded helmet with horns in the top. I really love how this figure turned out. It looks so close to the source material, and I really do love it in that way. Then, at the top of our list, we have the Breath of the Wild Zelda in her research outfit, and there's just something about this one. She looks like she's been done professionally to me. I can't find a fault in her printing. The face, the hair, all works. The accessories great. The torso print is also amazing. While there's a slight colour discrepancy, I'm not going to pick up on it, and I'm not going to be picky. This is just my favourite figure in technical accuracy, in how well it turned out. the fact that it just looks so good, and she's also a good character from the game as well. Like, no, don't get me wrong there, but the figure itself, I'm so impressed with. But that's gonna do it. You've seen me prattle on and rank all of these figures now, and that's gonna close us up for today. Tell me what your personal favorite is down below out of all 60 odd, 70 odd of those, and tell me if you completely disagree with either who I put at the bottom or who I put at the top. But that's going to do it for now. We're going to be closing up the custom set showcase next week on the channel, and well, get ready for wave 2 because it's coming in about a month and a bit. So see you next time. Consider subscribing, and goodbye.